Okay, so hey everyone. Sorry, I have some sort of a poor connection. But I will start right away. So this is the like one of the best sentences that I love when I work and study ransomware groups. We need to know the enemy, very well to defend ourselves against the enemy. And this is how it starts. And there are so many misconceptions about ransomware groups and how they operate. One of the misconceptions is that they are like a cartel crime syndicate. When I said cartel here, I mean like these, drug cartels, they kidnap people, ask for a ransom. So there are some similarities in that sense. And some defenders, they act like these are the groups that um, they need to treat like a cartel. So I will challenge that mindset in a bit. So I have a slide here that will show the differences between the cartels and the ransomware groups. Now, I will not go through all the details of this table, but the ransomware groups are financial motivated. They don't have, worries about the territorial control, power, or something like that. They are all, financial motivated group, and they frame their services as security services. You will see some negotiations, and even so they will say that this is a post-paid pen test services. They never call it a ransomware. They call it a post-paid pen test services. They think that they are doing something good. And and in other cases, if they attack a nonprofit organization or healthcare institutions, they publish apologies. They claim that they are trying to avoid the harm. They have a more decentralized structure, and I will show the structures. But they work with affiliates. Affiliates is like their partners in crime, and they call themselves as a service provider, like a ransomware is a service provider. On the other hand, cartels are, more hierarchical, and they have a strong central leadership. And there are so many differences when you look into the cartels and ransomware groups. On ransomware groups, we are talking about the teens, young adults. They want to make money in a very quick way. Even though it's a cyber crime, they don't think it's a crime, or even they don't think that they do so much harm like in the cartels. So we see fundamental differences between the cartels and ransomware groups, how they operate, how they frame themselves publicly. They always have these, hey, we are hacktivists. We do something good because if we do not attack you, someone will do. But we are attacking. We are just asking for some money, and there will be no harm. So this is a service. That's how they frame their business. I say business especially because they think that it's a business, even though I say it's a cybercrime. So my claim is that ransomware groups are more like tech startup unicorns. They are not like these, drug cartels. When I say unicorn, of course, there are different definitions of unicorn. I'm not talking about the mythical creature. I'm talking about the businesses valued at $1 billion. But when we talk about ransomware, we are talking about, dark unicorns. And, there are so many AI related topics, and this one is not an AI related topic. I will not talk about AI except this slide, because I asked, ChatGPT, give me the darkest unicorn that you can give, and this is what I get, which is a very dark unicorn. But when we talk about the ransomware cybercrime business ecosystem, we are talking about a multi-billion-dollar business ecosystem. And the advisories are not like childs hiding in their parents' garage or basement. We are talking about, these big organizations working with hundreds of affiliates, and in their term, they are providing a service. And when we look into the evolution of ransomware business model, at first it started like targeting individuals, right? You received when you open your laptop, there are the doc file saying that you got ransom, all your informations are encrypted, and so on and so forth. But then they start to target the companies. Then Bitcoin helped them a little bit, not Bitcoin, cryptocurrency helped them a little bit. Then they start to branch out by saying that they are providing ransomware as a service. They start to work with affiliates. They start mass exploitation attacks, and I will give some examples about that. Multiple extortion with DDoS attacks. And nowadays, we start to see more and more they are targeting the supply chain. They are targeting the weakest link in the third-party ecosystem, and through that, they provide try to extort money from their victims or their victims' clients. So this is really important to understand how this system evolved in time. Now, when we look into the general ransomware cybercrime business ecosystem, ransomware operators, oops, I need to go back a little bit. Sorry. Okay, when we talk about the general business ecosystem, ransomware operator is just one part of it. There's a black market. There are credentials are sold, the stealer logs are sold, there are exploits are sold, there are initial access brokers. They purchase these information, they extract the variable access information and sell it to ransomware operators. Ransomware operators work with other threat actors. They have legitimate vendors that they use. They have pen testers working for a shell company. Even those pen testers, they don't know they are working for a ransomware group. They have outsourced developers and so on and so forth. So, and most importantly, they work with hundreds of affiliates. The affiliates, they do the attack, then ransomware operators, they do the negotiations, and they pay commission to the affiliates. That's how it works in the ransomware cybercrime business ecosystem. Now, when we look into the organizational structure, at first, I'm going to show you a very ideal structure of a ransomware gang. There are only a few ransomware gang that they had this type of a vertical hierarchical structure. But when we look into that, they have these, different departments that we see in our companies as well. They have this finance guy, they have this people guy, they have this research and development guy, but these are all have different names. They call it like tech admin. They call it, maybe they have a money guy, money launderer guy. They have a negotiator. They have a poster. They post these, affiliate posts or job posting on the hacker forums. They even have bug bounty programs. So we are talking about a structure like that. Again, there's a very ideal structure in a ransomware group. They try to reach out this structure to have a good income for their cybercrime business. But this is really important to understand. When they talk in negotiations, there are so many negotiations, examples out there, and you can also say, look out to that. They never ask for a ransom. They don't call it a ransom. They call it post-paid pen test services. This is from Lockbit's negotiations, you see. And they have, some market analysis. They say that, hey, you are a European company or you are serving to European citizens, so you are subject to GDPR. And based on that, you will get this much penalty if you don't, if these informations are go out. So just pay my money and you will not have to worry about all those things. So this is their mindset. And when they were asked about, by the way, they give interviews to reporters. When they were asked about what they do, why they do what they do, and they said that it is because, if I don't do it, somebody will do it. And I'm just showing you the way. In fact, there was this one ransomware group, Black Cat, when they did an attack. After the attack, they published a very detailed, post-incident analysis with details like this: how I infiltrated you, this how I exploited this vulnerability, and so on and so forth. So in their mind, they are actually helping their victims by, providing all this information. But of course, that's just the paint that they want to put on their business. It's a cybercrime. They are doing harm, but they are not aware of that. And when we compare ransomware groups to tech startups, we can see these similarities, right? Both they are trying to maximize the revenue. Of course, ransomware groups call it, they don't call it ransom, but it's a ransom. And the perception for ransomware groups is security services. And for revenue model, it's a ransomware as a service. And then they work with affiliates. It's like a company is working with business partners. And in fact, the commission that they pay to affiliates is it started like 30%, 40%. It went up to maybe these days 90% commission are on the table. So when we have these, similarities, it is very clear that ransomware groups are more like tech startups than the drug cartels that we talked at the beginning. When we understand that, it is much easier to understand their tactics, techniques, and procedures. It is much easier to understand their mindset. It is much easier to understand how they pick a target. And that's why, we have these similarities between the ransomware groups and tech startups. This is a video that, I also posted on LinkedIn that you can see. I hope that I can start this video. But this shows, how the leadership changed. Like this Lockbit and Amphi, they were dominant for a while. Then we see some one-off groups like Malas, they were dominant for a month. They were pro-Ukraine, but they disappeared in after a month. Club Ransomware Group, they are famous with their mass exploitation. They were behind the movie attacks. They are behind the clear vulnerabilities attacks. But after the disruption by the law enforcement through Lockbit and Amphi and Lockbit, they start to lose their power in time, and we start to see new players coming up. And Amphi, they exited the system. They didn't pay the commission of their affiliate, and I will talk about that, and that changed everything. Now we start to see the new groups like Ransom Hub, Play, and they start to become number one. Lockbit, as a last resort, they publish all the victims they have in May, and then, sorry, in August, and then they disappeared, almost disappeared completely. Now we see all these new ransomware groups in top 10. All the new ransomware groups that we see today, they were not, most of them, they didn't exist 1 year ago. So this is how, fast the system changed, the ransomware ecosystem changed. This is how fast a group can become number one. In couple of months, they can become number one. And we analyzed, all these, ransomware victims, and we also look into time difference between two consecutive successful ransomware attacks for the same victim. The time difference was maybe like 6 months apart, or 5 months apart, a year apart. Nowadays, it is 7 days apart, 5 days apart. The reason behind is that after Black Cat exited the system without paying the commission to their affiliates, the affiliates, they want to get paid. Now, they deploy one ransomware from one ransomware group. If they don't get paid quick enough, they deploy another ransomware from another ransomware group. So the time difference shrinked a lot because of these reasons, because of the affiliate transitions between different ransomware groups. And now the affiliates, they work with multiple ransomware groups, and they try to get paid as soon as possible. So that's the reason that we see here. And you see, these affiliate transitions between different ransomware groups and so on. And there are much details like this in a generic report that I also published on LinkedIn. And what changed? What made these transitions a lot? The change is the Change Healthcare incident. When Change Healthcare attack happened in February, the Black Cat, they allegedly got the payment, ransom payment, about $22 million, and they didn't pay the commission to their affiliates. And now there are so many affiliates, they are working for some ransomware group to work with. And one ransomware group, Ransom Hub, they changed the system. They said that, hey, I will pay you 90% commission. In the past, it was 70%, maybe 60%. They bumped that up to 90%. And they also said that, hey, you will get the money first and give my 10% cut. So they changed the business model. They attracted so many affiliates to them. That's why now they are in number one and number two, depending on the month. But that's actually one change. The other change is that these affiliates, they got this because of these law enforcement, agencies, disruptions, and everything. And Lockbit or Alfie, they were they were publishing apologies if they were attacked, if they attacked to a healthcare institution, right? They had some twisted code of conduct. But now the affiliates, they said that, okay, it is our market now. It's not ransomware operators market. It's an affiliate-driven market. We will attack whoever we want. They don't care about these, code of conduct anymore. And this another graphic shows exactly what I said. The top 10 ransomware group today, most of them, they did not exist 1 year ago. So this is quite important to understand how fast it changed. And we see that healthcare victims are increasing a lot. We recently published a healthcare report about that. It is currently 8% of the ransomware victims are in healthcare, and probably will exceed 10% in the following months. And this twisted code of conduct that I talk about, like whenever they attack a healthcare institution, their affiliate attacked a healthcare institution, these major ransomware groups, they were publishing these apologies. There is no more the case. Even in fact, there is no negotiations at all. So they just want their money, and there's no negotiations. There's no negotiation panel, because these new ransomware groups, they don't have enough infrastructure to create a negotiation panel. And that's why we start to see these, top targeted industries changing because of all these incidents happened. Now, healthcare was number 7, it's number 3 now. Education is going down because these groups, they have more intelligence about the target ecosystem. They know that these K-12 schools, they don't have enough money to pay the ransom. Finance and insurance, it's going up again because these new groups, they start to get enough power, enough resources to attack these big institutions. And when we ask ourselves, how do they attack? Based on our study, the top attack vector in the recent years are the exploiting vulnerabilities. Phishing and social engineering is still there. It is very dominant. In fact, it is very difficult to decouple these two vectors. They usually go side by side, but it is not the main attack vector. It's not the number one attack vector. There are also other attack vectors still in the picture. And there are so many vulnerabilities in the last year. They were exploited by these ransomware groups in a mass manner. Of course, there are other reports like the Microsoft Digital Defense Report that they shows that social engineering is the top attack vector. I will not argue that our study showing otherwise, but again, it is very difficult to decouple these top attack vectors. Open RDP ports, SMP ports, VPN ports, those are still in the picture, and those are still dominant when we're looking at that. But the vulnerability is number one thing. And how do we know the next MOVEit vulnerability? MOVEit vulnerability, you see the numbers, I will not go through them. It was very impactful. Club ransomware groups, they did a mass exploitation. They attacked, hundreds of companies, and indirectly that impacted, thousands of vulnerabilities. And it is very difficult to manage the vulnerabilities because the vulnerability space is expanding very rapidly. Like there are thousands of vulnerabilities published every one. There are almost around 90 vulnerabilities published per day. And it is very difficult to see, all these vulnerabilities and understand which one is the MOVEit type of vulnerability, which one might be the one that might be exploited by these ransomware groups. So it is quite important to understand what's going on. The first institution, they have a very nice graph that they show that if you look into the vulnerability space, it's a very large space. You cannot, analyze and understand which one is the problematic one. But the one that are exploited in the wild is actually very small. Those are the ones that we need to focus on. The red circle that you see in this graph, those are the ones that we need to focus on because if we just use one metric like CVSS and say that, those are the ones that we need to focus on, that is impossible job. You need other metrics. There are metrics like EPSS. There are other, intelligence resources that you can use to understand which one is currently exploited or might be exploited by the threat actors. The slide transitions are a little bit slow for me. Sorry about that. I pause a little bit. But we understand how these, ransomware gangs, they pick a target. We analyze all the victims. We analyze around 5,000 victims per year. And we know how they select a ransomware group. There are certain countries that they usually focus on. These are wealthy countries that they get money. There are no countries they don't attack. They don't want to get attention of those countries' government. Manufacturing is number one for the last 3 years. Professional and technical services number two for the last 3 years. So we know these trends. And even though we see these, these major companies, the big companies on the news as ransomware victims, those are not the typical victims. The typical victims of ransomware groups are, they have an annual revenue less than $100 million, even less than $20 million, because these companies are too big enough to, pay something, but not too big to make a fuss, so that the law enforcement agencies come after these groups. So they learn their lessons from past events like Conti, like Black Matter. They don't want to get attention of these law enforcement agencies. Usually, their typical victims, there are mid-sized companies. And the other thing is that the mid-sized companies, they don't know how to react to these situations. If their shop is closed for a year, for a week, then they will be out of business. That's a pressure that these ransomware groups knows. So considering all these factors, as a researcher, as a scientist, I try to come up with a ransomware risk indicator, a ransomware susceptibility index that will give me the mindset of these ransomware groups. So I put all these technical factors like the vulnerabilities, the credentials, still looks, all these things that they use, and also put all the non-technical factors like the geolocation of a company, industry of a company, the revenue of the company. And I created this metric with my teammates 4 years ago, and it is quite successful to show the ransomware risk. And we believe that if we can monitor the ransomware risk for ourselves, for our third parties, that will tell us what's going on and if we can hit by a ransomware incident. And what we realized is that 46% of the companies in the highest risk region experience a ransomware attack. And 46% is a very high possibility, by the way, because ransomware, if you ask the cyber insurance companies, they will say that ransomware is a rare event. And in fact, it's a rare event. Annually, there are around 7,000 victims. But there are millions of companies all around the world. If you look into that ratio, it's a rare event. But if you have enough indicators, if you are flashing lights to these ransomware groups, these are like pirate ships, and you are a ship in an ocean, and you are sending these beacons to these pirates saying that, hey, I am here, I'm a juicy target for you, I have enough revenue to give you something, I have these problems, just attack me. They will attack you. You are in the radar of the ransomware groups. And in fact, that's what we try to measure with the ransomware risk. What is the likelihood of being in the radar of the ransomware groups? Of course, I will not go into the details or math of that metric, but we can see that is quite powerful. And even though I talk about only 4 factors, there are other factors that we look into. So what are the best practices in prevention of ransomware? I always say that don't be a target. My general recommendation is that be a ghost ship in this pirated ocean. Do not send these signals. Do not have all these problems. Of course, it is very difficult. I know that, especially vulnerability management is difficult. You have to check all these open ports. You have to check the still logs, the stolen credentials. You need to look into all these indicators. You need to have a strong email security. By the way, strong email security is possible. It is quite possible. Probably one of the easiest things among all these things that you see here. But still, we have seen problems. We did an analysis for the companies in a certain sector, certain industry. 50% of those companies, they don't even have a demarc record, for instance. A very basic thing to do, but they don't have. That was so surprising. And it's not just you, by the way. As I showed the evolution of the ransomware groups, they also attack your vendors. So you need to also monitor your vendors as well to be a ghost ship in these pirated oceans. And of course, you should always, look into, these tabletop exercises. It's not like you can be gossip and you'll be safe. If you're a juicy target, they will come after you. But with the right tabletop exercises, you will know what to do when it happens. But I want to change the narrative. Like when people talk about the ransomware groups or ransomware incidents, they always say that it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. I argue that you can make it a matter of if. If that happens, what will I do? You should definitely work on it. But there is a way to avoid these attacks. There is a way to get ahead of the curve by being proactive rather than reactive. People invest so much on the reactive measures. Like, when it happens, what I'm going to do, I will do this, I will have a cyber insurance, I will inform this and that, of course, or I will have the backup sources. By the way, backup servers you need to have, but recovering from backup server to live environment, it is not an easy job. You need to have so much practice on that one. You need to have all of these things, but you cannot just think about the reactive measures. You need to also talk about the proactive measures. So that's, the number one thing is that ransomware is a high level threat. When you have enough indicators, if you are a juicy target, you will be in the radar of the ransomware groups. And the impact is too much. There's disruption, there are reputation damages, there are money loss. There are so many things, around the ransomware incident. And it is not just you. Like we see that in the Change Healthcare incident, like Change Healthcare, when they hit by ransomware groups, all the hospitals, they stopped. They couldn't prescribe medicines. They couldn't schedule appointments. The labs couldn't work. Same thing happened with Blue Yonder. Same thing happened with other things. So it is not just you. It is all the ecosystem around you will be impacted by ransomware. So we need to think about that a lot. And we need to be focusing on making ourselves less of a target. We need to stop looking like a juicy target for these ransomware groups. I publish all these insights, especially on the ransomware groups a lot on LinkedIn. I have the videos like I showed you on LinkedIn, and I'm quite active. So if you want to connect, I'm happy to connect. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer offline when we have that conversation. But it is, an honor to be here to present at the Sun Summit. You can see my LinkedIn profile here, and I am also at the summit. For anyone who is at the summit, I am happy to connect. Thank you.